he just wanted to let me know that he had made a statement publicly, and he wanted me to be aware of that. And he reiterated that he believed that the report should not be released. Mike has not tried to weigh in one way or the other. He has not tried to influence the committee.
For those out there, SOT means sound on tape. That was sound on tape from the House Ethics Chair on the report. So Speaker Johnson is calling them. What do you make of this situation? This ethics report into Matt Gaetz is said to be pretty scathing.
Well, first, let me say that I don't think it's appropriate for the Speaker to contact the committee about a matter that they're dealing with currently. Michael Guest is a very good man. He's a friend, and I know he's obviously in a tough spot. But right now, this report is completed, and it's clear what's happening. Matt Gaetz resigned to an attempt to prevent the report from becoming public. That said, the investigation was complete, and there's plenty of precedent for releasing reports after a member has resigned from Congress. There is no House rule that prohibits the release of a report. It has been a custom or a tradition or a courtesy not to release reports or make statements after the member has departed. But there is a big difference in this case. Most members, once they resign after scandal, they leave quietly and go about rebuilding their lives, their relationships, and their reputations. They don't get nominated to be the top cop of the country, the U.S. Attorney General. And so that's what's different here. And you have a United States Senate on a bipartisan basis asking for this report to inform their decision as they have to deal with the confirmation process. They want this report as part of the official record. And so you have that out there as well. And frankly, maybe the American people would like to know what's in this report, since this man is being asked to be the chief law enforcement officer of the country. So there are different circumstances. By the way, there was a case in 1990 where a member of Congress, a report was released after he left for having apparently a relationship with a 16-year-old girl or woman. That was the case. There was another case in 1987 where a member was where there was a member who had problems with bribery and misuse of campaign funds. A report was released after that. I can go into Mark Foley's case. Sitting members were deposed after Foley resigned over sending inappropriate text messages to pages. And Blake Farenthold, in 2018, the committee made a public statement after he resigned regarding a matter that dealt with sexual harassment and a settlement.
Yeah, so it's taken allegations of sexual misconduct pretty seriously, the Ethics Committee has. The argument that we're hearing from Republicans, and we heard it from Lindsey Graham there, I've heard it from Anna Paulina Luna today, is that the DOJ didn't bring any charges against Matt Gaetz. He's not been legally charged with any of this. So whatever the House Ethics Committee has found, it doesn't really matter because he's facing no legal consequence for the allegations that he had sex with a 17-year-old girl.
That's a pretty low bar. He hasn't been charged with a crime. That's a very low bar. I mean, like this committee report, I don't know how these reports are written. They're probably recommending some kind of a sanction, a reprimand, a censure, in the worst case, an expulsion. Sometimes during the course of an ethics investigation, they find potential criminal conduct or misconduct. And these reports or these individuals sometimes are referred to the Department of Justice for further review or consideration. But one thing's for sure, that this report is going to say that Matt Gaetz brought discredit upon the House at the very least, and so they will make statements about his character and his behavior, that it was conduct unbecoming a member of Congress at the very least. So just to say he hasn't been convicted, well, yeah, we're talking about the top cop for the United States.
Yeah.
This is the head law enforcement officer. If the standard is, well, he hasn't been charged with a crime, they didn't exonerate him either. Actually, they just didn't bring charges. I think we have to distinguish that.
There's an argument that if you're going to have a bar for anybody, it's got to be pretty high for AG. I wonder about what Republicans might face if they say no to this. I mean, you have Donald Trump going out individually pressuring or trying to convince Republicans to say yes to Matt Gaetz. You also have other Republicans who are going on TV and being not so subtle about their threats if somebody were to go against Donald Trump. You have Tommy Tuberville on Fox saying, if they want to get in the way, fine, but we're going to try and get you out of the Senate if you try to do that, primary them if they don't give Donald Trump what he wants. Marjorie Taylor Greene is talking about releasing ethics reports about other people. Of course, those have to be actually begun, and investigations have to be begun. You have Anna Paulina Luna, who I mentioned a moment ago, saying that John Cornyn maybe hasn't been MAGA enough, loyal enough. I mean, these aren't so subtle threats about what might happen to them. You also have Elon Musk saying he's willing to put up money to primary anybody that goes up against Donald Trump, too. And Elon Musk has a whole lot of money to throw behind somebody else if he so chooses. So if you're facing that sort of pressure, how likely are you to say no to Trump?
Well, all these people making big threats are also ones who don't have to run in general elections in competitive districts. And I can tell you, I don't think this election this nomination is ever going to be voted on the Senate floor. There are too many problems. I bet there are at least 4 Republicans opposed to this. What are they going to do to Mitch McConnell? What are they going to do to Lisa Murkowski? I mean, you're going to have other members who are up in 2026. Who are in competitive situations. The least of their problem is going to be a primary. It's going to be a general election. And if some of these Republicans want to go out and take down, viable Republican senators and take them down in their primaries, only to lose the general election, what have they accomplished? I mean, this is it's absurd. And for people to threaten investigations against members because of the release of a report, I mean, I just think that's completely out of bounds and uncalled for, and we shouldn't take it seriously. But at the end of the day, we'll see if this ever gets to a vote. Put me down as very skeptical.
Yeah, I've got my eyes on Tom Tillis to see what he says about this and where he might be going, because he's a good indicator, somebody who's up in 2026. All right, Charlie Dent, good to have you. Thanks for joining us.